Jamie, great to have you here. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Rick.
Yeah.
Yes, good to be seen.
So Jamie Waldren is the founder and CEO of JN Private Wealth Management. He's also been a member of my chief executive group, and he's recently published a book. It's a great book, by the way. I really enjoyed it. Exit on Your Own Terms, and I found it really helpful. 10 blind spots you need to know about as you're thinking about and planning your exit from your business. Jamie, I'd love to hear more about, why is it you wrote the book, and what's your objective there?
Sure. Yeah, it's great to be with you, Rick, and hope you're doing well.
Thank you.
So I decided to write a book just to kind of educate people about some of the issues, primarily business owners, private business owners, about some of the issues. I've been, in the industry for about 30 years, and I've seen some good business owner transactions and some business owners that were disappointed in when they got ready to start selling their business.
Yeah.
And so the reason I did it is just because there's a huge market for privately held business owners. I don't know if you're aware of, there's anywhere between 33 and 34 million privately held business owners in the United States. It's a huge market. It's about 1/3 of the U.S. GDP. And so it's a huge market. About 50 million people work in these companies, approximately. And 75% of those business owners are going to be transfer their business over the next 10 years. So that's a very interesting statistic. And the other thing that's very interesting is only 24% of them have a will. So you've got this huge amount of money, $14 trillion is going to be transferring over the next, 10 years. And only a quarter of the people have a basic will.
Wow.
And so there's just a huge planning opportunity, not only for somebody like myself that focuses on business owners using a virtual family office, but other advisors, tax attorneys, insurance specialists, accountants, other people that work in this space. There's a huge opportunity to help these people transition their business in the most tax efficient way over the next, few years.
Absolutely. Wow. Well, it's incredible. You raised the question, but I think that's a great question for our CEOs. Where are you in terms of your planning for exit, and do you have a will? All those kinds of questions would really
Absolutely.
help. Yeah. Well, let me ask some questions from your book that I found particularly helpful. And the first one's around succession plans, and it is a question that, as you know, we bring up in our CE group meetings. So if someone doesn't have a succession plan, how important is that for their exit, and how do they get started?
Good question, Rick. It's absolutely critical. Think of it as a sports analogy. You would not go into a football game without having a game plan. If you did, you were definitely doomed to fail. So not having some sort of succession plan for your business is just asking for problematic problems if something were to happen, or you will not be ready to exit the business when that time comes around. So it's absolutely critical that you have a succession plan, because failing to plan is planning to fail, to be honest with you. And it must start ahead of the exit. Generally you need 18, 24 months, maybe 36 months to plan your business, depending on where it is in the cycle.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely essential to get started working with somebody that's going to help you through this process. And there's a lot of advisors out there that can help you do that. Your accountant, your attorney, a wealth manager like myself. There's a lot of people that focus on business owners. And so it's absolutely critical that one thinks about the exit. Stephen Covey said, begin with the end in mind.
Right.
But a lot of people don't do it because they're tied up in the business and they just never get around to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, no, that's a key factor. A second one is, and I've heard this from a number of our members. I'm thinking about exiting. I have a figure in my head as to what my company's worth. So what's really critical for our business owners when they're thinking of exiting and they want to value their business?
Yeah, that's another good question. A lot of times a business owner will have a number in mind, but it's not really his number or her number. Maybe it's a number that a competitor got or one of their friends got. Maybe they got a 10 multiple or a 12 multiple, but it's totally depending on the business, the financial management of the business, the ownership, the executives, if it's a government contractor, it's the contracts, there's a lot of things that go into it. And, starting working with somebody ahead of time to kind of take a look at your financial, your balance sheet, all the information about how it's set up and just everything, your employees, and the culture and everything else. It's really important to take a look at that ahead of time before you start thinking about exiting, because a lot of times the value, it could be depending on interest rates. Like right now, the interest rates are up. Several years ago, there were businesses, government contractors were selling for 16, 18 multiples, depending on, and now they're probably a lot lower right now. You can imagine what's going on with Doge and everything else in the government contracting market is the multiples have dropped. So now is a time to kind of take a look at your house and get your house in order. So when things get back to more normal times, and if you decide that now is the time to pull the trigger, you're in a position to do that and to maximize the value of the business.
No, absolutely. And when I do pull that trigger and go into an M&A or a sale, what kind of impact are taxes going to have? How do I need to think about the tax impact on my wealth coming out of the sale?
No, that's a great question. Taxes are so important right now. It's not a matter of what you get for the business, it's what you keep. And that's why another very important thing is the planning. If you have a long runway, there's a lot of different tax mitigation strategies that one could think about in terms of mitigating the taxes on the sale of the business. And so you keep more in your pocket versus giving it to the government, which, and most people want to do, they want to have a tax mitigation strategy. So in order to do that, you need to really plan ahead, whether you're going to be doing a charitable remainder trust or some of these other qualified small business sale, where you can defer a lot of capital gain tax. You really need to get a team of advisors together, and you need to plan ahead for that, because if you don't, then you could end up giving a third to 40% of your company profits and the capital gain to the government, where if you plan ahead and you have some totally legit tax mitigation strategies that somebody has developed for you, you can end up keeping a lot more of that in your pocket. Now, given we live in a great country, taxes are, you have to pay taxes, but you don't have to pay any more than necessary. And a good tax attorney, a good accountant can help you take a look at different strategies depending on what your objectives are and help mitigate those taxes where possible.
How much do the taxes? How much are the taxes impacted by where I live?
Well, that's another good question. So depending on your state, if you live in Florida, obviously they don't have a state income tax. If you live in Tennessee, there's a number of different states that don't have state income taxes, but a lot of it depends on what state your business is domiciled in and what state that you live in. So state, residence does make a difference. But if you're in California, it could be, in the, I think it's the 14%. If you live in New York, it's probably pretty high, Illinois, but there are also some other states that are more tax efficient, but you have to be careful about that. And you need to make sure you work with your accountant and your tax advisor about that.
Yeah. And I assume upon a sale, that would be more capital gains than income, correct?
Yeah, that's the idea, is get as much of it into capital gains as you can versus ordinary income.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So I sell my business, I put a chunk of money in the bank, want to maximize that amount. How do I monetize that so that I can continue the kind of lifestyle I want to lead?
Well, that's where a wealth manager or investment advisor would come in to play, depending on your lifestyle, how much money you need to live on, per month or per year. Once you get the net proceeds after tax sale of the business, you want to work with your investment advisor and help put together a plan, an income replacement plan. How are you going to replace your income? And so that's something that, a good advisor can do, can look at, various types of, annuities. There's a lot of different products out there, bonds, equities, to come up with a conservative strategy that's going to provide you with an income replacement number that you're looking for. And the average number right now, most people use is around 3 to 4% of whatever the principal is. So you can do the math on, depending on what your spending habits on. But a lot of people will divide up their needs between discretionary and non-discretionary. And, you'll get Social Security, and if you have any other pensions, things like that. But working with a good financial advisor can really kind of nail down exactly what kind of withdrawal rate that you're going to need from that portfolio once you sell your business.
And as I start developing that exit plan and thinking through, when's the right time, what are some of the factors that I need to consider around the timing of the sale and my exit from the business?
Yeah, there's a number of different factors. It really comes down to you personally. When are you willing to kind of give it up and move on? And that's a hard decision for business owners because they've gotten emotionally involved in the business. Many times business owners will think of their personal life with their business. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make, is that they don't separate their personal and their business life. Because if you have a personal plan and then you have a business plan, oftentimes you want to execute the business plan first, and then the personal plan will continue as long as you're living. So the time to do it is just when you're ready to kind of make work optional. I call it. It's just time to start thinking about maybe the business is growing to a certain level and you need to make some changes in order to take it to the next level, or you need to bring in a special skill set, maybe some new management people. Maybe you need to look at getting more employees involved and maybe doing an ESOP or something like that. So there's a lot of different things, but it really boils down to when does the owner feel like they're ready, to kind of throw in the reins and make work optional. But a lot of times, even if you decide to sell the business, if you sell it to private equity, there's an earnout. So you're going to be working for another 1 to 2 years, maybe have to roll some of that money back into the new entity. So those are all things that you want to kind of decide, and you may be okay with them. But if you want to stop working and spend your afternoons at the beach or out on the golf course, and then you're going to have to kind of figure that out into your plan. But oftentimes people will kind of roll out of selling their business, and it'll take maybe a couple years for them to eventually totally get out of the business.
So the sale and the exit can be two different things.
Exactly. And a lot of it depends on health and,
Yeah. We all want to have a legacy, and we're frequently thinking about what can I leave to my loved ones? How do you transfer wealth in a way that leaves the heirs that legacy in a harmonious way?
Yeah, there are many tactics that are available. Primarily it's through trust. There's all kinds of different trusts that are out there that you can put money into for the benefit of future generations, generation skipping trusts, spousal trusts, SLAT trusts. There's a lot of different types of trust. So working with a good estate and trust attorney is probably the best way to go to make sure that you understand what your legacy is, who you want to eventually receive your hard work and all the money that you're going to be leaving. Because in most cases, you're not going to spend it all. And you certainly can't take it with you. So you want to take care of your loved ones, support the causes you care about. And some people want to make a difference in the world. And there's a lot of different strategies out there, but it's usually working with a good estate and a trust attorney. And a lot of times people may have those, and maybe they have a will or a trust they did 20 years ago, but it's not really valid right now. So just having a conversation with a good estate and trust attorney, and I have several of them on my team, but there are certainly a lot of good estate and trust attorneys out there that can help you plan for that legacy, to transfer that money to the next generation in the most tax efficient way.
Absolutely. So speaking of, giving back to others. So as one gives back through contributions, how do you do that in both a tax efficient way and in a way that's aligned with my values, what I want to be giving?
Sure. Yes, there are a lot of strategies out there for philanthropic giving, charitable remainder trust, donor advised funds. Some clients will even go as far as setting up a private foundation. But there are a lot of strategies out there where you can benefit your family and benefit charity, and also get a nice tax deduction when you sell your business. Recently, I set up a charitable remainder trust for one of my clients, and he's very philanthropic. We set up an organization called Embrace the Brave. I'm on the board. He's very involved in helping military people transition out of the military. So there are a lot of good strategies out there. So if one of your goals is to make a difference in the world and, the causes that you support, the causes you care about, there are a lot of good tax mitigation strategies out there that a good estate of trust attorney or a good wealth manager can kind of help guide you through, depending on what your needs are and what you're trying to do.
Yeah, wonderful. I think my last question, Jamie, we've through this conversation, there's a lot of complexity here. There are a lot of elements, there are a lot of resources and areas of expertise that need to be brought together. And so I think for a lot of my members, they probably have an investment advisor, someone helping them invest the monies that they have. But when you're talking about exiting a business that you own, it's a more complex situation. How do I know when it's time to move from an investment advisor and perhaps needing something more like a family office?
Yeah, so a lot of people have investment advisors, maybe helping them with their 401k or maybe managing some assets, some family assets. And primarily the focus for investment advisors is on managing assets, managing the money. But when you start to get to a point where you're thinking about selling your business, then you're talking about a whole different level of complexity, and you really have to work with some really good subject matter experts. So in my opinion, is if you have a relationship with an investment advisor, that's fine, but you will probably also want to engage either a wealth manager or somebody that has a stable of subject matter experts, say maybe in the tax area, maybe in the valuation area, maybe in the investment banking area, maybe in the estate and trust area, somebody that works collaboratively with these other advisors, because what happens a lot of the times, these advisors don't talk to each other and they don't work together. So you need somebody designated, kind of like a quarterback. Think of a quarterback on the team. He's calling the play, he's calling audibles, he's kind of the leader. You need somebody kind of that's going to step up and kind of coordinate all these other advisors to make sure that everything is working succinctly together and that everything, gets taken care of, and then there are no gaps that are left behind. And that's really what the book talks about. Is if you have an investment advisor, that's great. But sometimes when you go to sell the business, that investment advisor may not work in business succession planning or helping clients sell their business. So you need to work with somebody that has a deeper bench, that has other types of financial advice or subject matter experts or advisors on their team that they can bring in if you happen to need that person.
That's great. So, Jamie, I know I found the book helpful. We've covered a number of topics here. How can folks get a copy of the book?
Sure. Yeah, they can just go to my website and scroll down to the middle. There's a section on there. They can just send an email, and we need to know the address. And I'm not selling the book. I'm willing to give it away to any business owner that's looking to sell their business, kind of get a roadmap together, a game plan as far as what they need to be thinking about. And then so they can order the book online. And the only thing that I would ask, Rick, is that I'd like to get some feedback from anybody that reads the book. Just like you've given me some good feedback, and I appreciate that. So anybody that is interested in it, they go to my website and order the book. It'll be sent to them, and then they set up a 15-minute consultation where I can get some feedback from them, answer any questions. But generally, one or two of the blind spots that's outlined in the book are going to resonate with people, and they may have some additional questions. So that's how they can order the book, Rick.
Fabulous. Well, so thank you. I really appreciate your time. I think you're doing some great work here. And
my pleasure, Rick. It's always good to talk to you. And I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll be in touch.
You too. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you, Rick. Bye.